just so you understand, we had a totally divided country for 8 years, and long before that, in all fairness to President Obama, long before President Obama, we have had a very divided. I didn't come along and divide this country. This country was seriously divided before I got here.
Hey friends, thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back. Look, it's great to have back on the line 3Q info processors. They're tried and true libertarians, constitutionalists. They love liberty, and they're doing their level best to spread the truth. We have on Daddy Dragon, Gran Torino, and 412 Anon. So we'll welcome them all back. First, Gran Torino, you're on camera. How are you?
Wuss. Good to see you again, Sean. Thanks very much for having me back.
Yeah, what's up, brother? And we'll get an update from each and every one of you. So 412, welcome to you.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Sean.
Hey, thanks for coming back on. And Dragon, live from the UK. How are you, brother?
I'm very well, thank you.
Hey, a shout out to you for your video, Corinthian Conspiracy. I shared that over at SGTreport, and it was just a really great boots on the ground update to give people and to really jog our memories about how far we've come over the past 18 to 24 months, because many of you will recall the pictures that Q posted showing what appears to be Lisa Page and Stroke conspirators that were caught on video by the traffic camera that the White Hats had access to, and Q posted those pictures, and Dragon went directly to that location. And tell them what you discovered.
Yeah, no. So basically, we tried to do a reconstruction. Obviously, it was 18 months, 2 years after the date where the White Hats have got the access to that, and again, it's important for people to be aware of a number of things. First of all, the White Hats had got access to the traffic cameras in London to track the conspirators. That's what they was doing. So, in effect, they're actually showing you the good side, if there is a good side to it, of Five Eyes and the Five Eyes Agreement, where the United States can access the cameras in London to surveil people who are obviously conspiring against the United States of America. That's fine. We was there. When we got there, one of the things that we noticed straight away was the actual traffic camera that they accessed had been removed. So we was obviously having a look. We done the other bits in there, but there was, what Q had stated was that there were 6 conspirators in London at that time. We obviously discussed 2 of them, but with respect on this, and there's a big list of them in front of me. You've got the UK side and Australia, Christopher Steele, Robert Hannigan, the head of GCHQ. He resigned 3 days after President Trump was inaugurated, and only 2 years into the job. He was at the pinnacle of his career, and he resigned 3 days after President Trump was inaugurated. Then you've got Sir Richard Dearlove. He was the head of MI6. Downer, who was the Australian High Commission. Stephen Halper, one of the guys it looks like he was part of the CIA and all sorts of in-deep military surveillance. And he's also a professor at Cambridge University. Big list of these people. But again, Bill Priestrat, Comey, McCabe, Nellior, Broussard, but all of that now is coming to fruition, and we're seeing what's gone on. But the positive is, out there today, mainstream media will not and do not cover this. And we've gone out there because we're listening to Q. We're being pointed in the right direction. I am an everyday working guy. I'm a construction worker. To come together with others, to go to that place, and for us to do the mainstream media's job, because they won't do it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And fortunately for us here in the States here, we have Hannity and Tucker Carlson reporting on all of this stuff. But you're right, at CNN, they completely ignore Bruce Orr's testimony, which proves that this whole Russiagate thing was, we've known this, folks, but Russiagate is completely manufactured. The dossier is phony. Mueller knew it. He used it anyway. They went and got the FISA warrant. Of course, everything gets greenlit with these FISA courts. And they actually did wiretap Donald Trump while he was running for president. Completely illegal. And CNN continues to ignore it. Meanwhile, earlier this month, Peter Strzok has been fired and Page is cooperating. So this thing really is blowing wide open. And Gran Torino 412, your thoughts on any of this before we jump into some of the newer Q posts, because Q has been very, very active as of late.
I'm only just reminded of when Carter Page and Q was dropping to us all the information regarding the corruption in the FISA warrant applications. And we talked about it back in February or March when we were dissecting it. Bruce Orr's names came up, all of these, all the major players, all their names were brought to our attention. And it's only now, nearly 6 months after the fact, that the wheels of justice are slowly beginning to turn. And then mainstream, admittedly, only now starting to cover it, only becoming aware of it. But loads of great reports, loads of great conservative voices now pointing at it, and the complete illegality of the whole, the use of the Americans' intelligence systems to spy on then candidate Trump, now President Trump. They never thought she would lose.
Yeah, I'll just say it's nice to see what we've all kind of known for a long time now about this, Russia collusion, delusion. It's coming out, so there's some vindication there, which is kind of nice. It's nothing but a witch hunt. We've all known that for a while. Now that we're kind of, like Gran Torino said, the wheels of justice are finally slowly starting to turn. We're starting to see the fruits of that. And I think it's kind of by design that this whole thing has been allowed to play itself out, because the big thing is the media is going to come out looking really, really bad. And that's such an important part of the deep state, is that propaganda arm. And I think they kind of laid their own trap and laid down in it with this whole Russia collusion nonsense, because that's all they've been spewing. And when that proves to come up empty, there's going to be a lot of people that have been watching this whole thing unfold realize that it was nothing but a distraction, and should have just never even happened to begin with.
Yeah. Well, it was literally a deep state coup, because we've talked about this in the past. I mention it frequently in videos. The deep state is no longer deep. The shadow government is no longer in the shadows. We can see these guys as exemplified by Brennan and Clapper and Clinton and Podesta and Orr and the FBI, Comey. This is the deep state, folks, and it's operating in the wide open, and everybody with a pulse knows it. So they can't cover up their crimes anymore because their crimes are so legion. They're so obvious. So I guess the question is, guys, maybe this is a good segue to sealed indictments and resignations. Let's talk about these trends, 412. When are we going to see these high-level arrests? My friend Liz Crokin is convinced that Hillary Clinton herself will be arrested prior to November, or sometime before November 11th, I believe she said. Of course, now we see that November, I think, 11th parade has been bumped a year. Does this whole timetable shift a year, or are we going to start seeing high-level arrests?
Well, a couple appearances ago that I made on your channel, Sean, we talked about the trend, and I kind of alluded to the impatience of some people that nothing was happening. And I showed that the trend of sealed indictments was still strong. We were seeing consistently, on average, about 5,000 new sealed indictments. And I'm using qmaps.pub right now for this, because I just haven't had time to update my own analytics right yet. And they do a nice job just getting the high level trends out there, updated in real time. So anyway, if you see the trend all the way through August, it's been the slope of this line hasn't really changed, which was telling me before that we weren't as close to the end as we thought we were, because the sealed indictments weren't slowing down. Now look at August. We went from 5,000 a month, and now we're looking at just over 1,000 in August. It's really flattened out. So if we were to look at this in a bar chart like I had it, August bar would only be about 20% the size of the previous months coming before it. And that's what I was looking for to see, for when we'd start seeing the justice, is when that trend reversed itself and we saw these sealed indictments slow down. And that's exactly what happened last month. So I think Liz might be onto something. I think we may be about to see the hammer drop in the coming weeks. As far as resignations go, I'm going to refer to resignation.info. This is Resignation Anon's website. He maintains the resignation list and does a wonderful job with that. So if you want up-to-date, real-time up-to-date resignation data, I would go to resignation.info. I can't update my dashboard as often as he updates his, but you can just see that the count keeps growing. We're up to 4,400 plus resignations. So that hasn't slowed down as much. As you can see, the trend is still relatively large compared to the pre-Q days back in 2017. So we may continue to see the resignations, but I think more telling is the sealed indictments trend and how that's flattened out here this past month.
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting because people like to say that Trump is just the opposite side of the same coin as Hillary, but you guys know as well as I do that if Hillary was sitting in the White House, this deep state, which is no longer deep, would really remain hidden. They could have done a perfect job continuing to cover all this up because none of this would have spilled out. The mainstream media would have continued to just cover up for her in her crimes and everybody who's in on it. We see these same people time and time and time again, right? These same criminals, all associated with the Clinton Foundation. They're all treacherous. They're all guilty of treason. And who said it? Was it Dragon? They never thought she'd lose. Mm-hmm. And she lost. And I think she said in one of her fits of rage, right before the election, she said, if that son of a bitch wins, we'll all hang from nooses.
Yeah.
And guys, they don't have the cover of the White House anymore. She can't stack the deck at the DOJ and the State Department. The seventh floor shadow government has been dismantled by Trump. Now, the question is Sessions going to start acting like the AG we need him to be?
I mean, if you follow Q and trust Q, then you trust Sessions. I mean, that's a big part of following Q is trusting Jeff Sessions. So, I think he is going to do the job and get it done. But, that, I guess that remains to be seen. The face on it, on the face of it all, it doesn't seem like Trump and Sessions see eye to eye on pretty much anything right now. But I think that's all theater to get the Democrats to go and get behind Jeff Sessions and kind of build him up a little bit. And you could see that even today. I was watching the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings and all the opening remarks, and quite a few of the senators on both sides of the aisle, brought up this contentious relationship with Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and the Democrats were coming to bat for Jeff Sessions. So I think that's what they're going for is to get the media and the other side of the aisle to support Jeff Sessions to make it all that much harder on them when he turns around and then drops the hammer.
Well, Torino and Dragon, jump in, take turns on responding to that and what I'm about to say, just as it pertains to Q. So for those listening who follow Q, most of you do or you wouldn't have clicked play, but for those who think it's just a LARP, I think it's fascinating to, and I mentioned this I think in our last call, it's fascinating to recognize the deep state aligned against Trump. But for people to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, there is no counter coup to that coup. There are no white knights that would ever be smart enough to get together to take down that deep state coup. So wait, how is it so impossible to believe that there's a counter Q as represented by Q? And did you guys see that poll from the Washington Post? The QAnon conspiracy movement is very unpopular. It's hilarious. And then Q weighs in with fake polls, just like the fake polls they ran and reported about when Clinton and Trump were running for president. All the polls suggested he didn't stand a chance. Fake polls.
No electoral path to victory.
She's a 99% chance of winning.
Well, I've just got a few comments to make on Jeff Sessions. The first thing for people, and bearing in mind I'm English, so for me, I stand back and I look at what's going on there because I'm not personally involved. It's not, although it is obviously long-term affecting me, but Jeff Sessions, his nickname to people who know him in his profession and in the departments he's worked in. His nickname is the Silent Assassin. That tells you something. That tells you that they have got respect for him. And he may be mild-mannered, he may speak quite meekly, but to have a nickname in that profession of the Silent Assassin, in my view, says it all about his character. The second thing I would say is that Q told us there would be occasions where disinformation is necessary. I also believe strongly, and I'll get back to 412 and on there, and I've said even on Patriot Soapbox, at some points it confuses me where President Trump admonishes Jeff Sessions, and then others come back to me and say, trust the plan, Q's already said this, and don't forget, and Q has recently said this, love equals trust. So if they can get the Democrats to love Sessions, bearing in mind a big percentage didn't want him as the Attorney General, if they can get a lot of them to move towards him, then when the pain comes, they've already supported him.
I only want to, I'm trying to keep my emphasis primarily on the evidentiary, the evidence that we can plainly see. I can't outright speak about Q over here, even though we've got some great Q followers, got the Overton Glaziers here, and a lot of other patriots in Ireland slowly waking up. But to mention anything on the Q side over here is lost beyond most people. So what I try and steer to direct the conversation is to look at the reports coming out of Fox, look at the evidentiary evidence of Bruce Orr, what he did, his connections to Christopher Steele, their connections to Fusion GPS, it linking back then to oppositional information and being paid for not only by the FBI, but by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. So I am always steering people here that are saying, well, why are you such a supporter of President Trump and stuff like that? And if they mock or try to the right or askew from Q, I say, look, you can see Congress is coming to hold. You can see these people being pulled before court. We've talked about it back in February, March. We've given them the hypothesis, future proves past. And all the indications that Q has led us up until this point. But also not forgetting that Q also said that 70% of most of this won't be believed by the general population. Those good can't sleep, as Q said. So I always steer the conversation to what we can actually see brimming on the horizon, and the FISA warrants were just the icing on the cake. So for any dispute or any sort of people that just don't kind of grasp it over here, I just point them towards the evidence. Look at what's happening. It's coming. The storm is coming.
Yeah. And what I like is that President Trump takes his case to the American people directly via Twitter, right? So with him, we have a transparent presidency. And with her, with the witch, we would have had an opaque presidency because she told Goldman Sachs she has two positions on everything, a public one and a private one. So she's a hardcore criminal, and it's already on the record, guys. We already know what the DNC did to Bernie. Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign because of it. They stole it from Bernie. They stacked the deck before a single vote was cast. They're criminals, and yet none of these people has done time. Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Podesta brothers and Hillary Clinton are the four perp walks I want to see, and I want to see them as soon as possible. Hillary Clinton at the top of the list, and then it's a toss-up. I don't know. Who do we want worse? Debbie Wasserman Schultz, because I think Seth Rich's blood is on her hands, but it could be on Podesta's hands too. John I'm talking about, and then his brother Tony, he might have already been indicted. I'm not sure what's going on with Tony Podesta, but all four of them are on suicide watch. Let's just say that, because all four of them are guilty of treason, and I hope they're tried for their crimes. Anybody can jump in on that, and then I think I'm going to do a screen share. We can talk about the latest from Q here.
Well, I wanted to follow up again from what Gran Torino just spoke about, which is the FISA documents. Don't forget, there's 20 pages that are still redacted. And those 20 pages, I believe, President Trump and I believe he will do it very shortly, are going to be declassified. And it's already been said by Devin Nunes that within those 20 pages, there is something else that is more serious than the Steele dossier. Now, I can't imagine what would be more serious than the Steele dossier and what's going on. But for Devin Nunes to say that, and don't forget, Devin was in England 4 days ago asking to speak to the heads of our intelligence, MI5, MI6 and GCHQ, and they all refused to see him.
Yeah, that's powerful. I wonder what it is. Any guesses?
I haven't got a clue. But I do know that Huma has definitely impaneled grand juries, because it slipped out on one of there was a talk show, and I believe it was on Fox News, and there was a clip of it where they said the only information that they couldn't give us was the information that was put before a grand jury. So we know that Huma has been involved with grand juries in relation to what's going on now.
You guys know what the key is to bringing all of this down, right? To unraveling the whole BS fable of Russian hacking. The whole key to bring the whole thing down is the murder of Seth Rich. Mm-hmm. The whole thing can be absolutely unraveled if it can be proven that Seth Rich was the leaker, which Kim.com says he has the evidence and he's willing to provide it to Mueller, and Mueller doesn't want to hear it. And you remember the Podesta email saying he's all for making an example of the leaker, which suggests that they knew the leaker was not from Russia. It was an internal DNC leaker. And then everybody thinks it was Seth Rich. Assange has made mention that essentially that it was Seth Rich. Kim.com says it was Seth Rich. And then Seth Rich was murdered. It's the key to bringing this whole thing down. The NSA must be able to get that information, right? And recall that the DNC refused to turn over the server to the FBI. The FBI was so concerned about Russian hacking, but the DNC wouldn't let the FBI have the server, which would prove or disprove Russian hacking. And the reason they wouldn't turn it over is because that DNC server would have only proved that all of that data was downloaded locally, probably onto a thumb drive or a portable drive, and the leaker was Seth Rich. He's the key to this whole thing.
Well, there's a couple of interesting points you've made. First of all, we know there's also a backup server from, and that information has come via Judicial Watch and Tom Fritton. So we know, and previously they tried to keep that information away. Now it turns out that there is a backup server. But there's two elements to this. First of all, recently we have seen information to say that there was a hack, and I'm not talking about the Seth Rich hack. I think there's two separate things going on. There's the Seth Rich information, and there's a separate hack. And the separate hack, it looks to me, that they have used, someone has used SMTP, a simple mail transfer protocol, and added a blind copy or a CC once that information comes out. Now, anyone who's really technical out there will understand that our mail is store and forward. Someone has got access to that and planted some code in there. So every time the Clintons sent an email out from that server, not the server, but the router itself that stored and forward on that device was something that someone added a piece of code that then copied it. And that from that copy, it either went to, and I don't know who it went to, it was either the Chinese, the Russians, it could be the UK for all I know.
The Israelis.
The Israelis. But
you're talking about the private server in Chappaqua, right? So that's another crime for which she's guilty of treason, essentially, sedition against the government. She set up her private server in Chappaqua, and then Comey knew that it was egregious what she had done. It was criminal what she had done. And I think he called it a woeful oversight, or incredibly incompetent, or careless, reckless.
Yeah.
So it didn't reach the legal standard for her to be indicted because he covered for her. He's been running cover for that family for years. They all have been. They're all connected. That's the whole point here. The deep state, it's so obvious how criminal they all are. And so, but just to be clear, Dragon, what you were just talking about is her other set of issues, and that's the private server in Chappaqua, which, according to some insiders, was hacked by the Chinese government.
Yeah, and I think there is a link. This is only my opinion. I think there's a link between that hack, code being put on a router, not a server, a router, and I believe there's a strong possibility that that router was a ZTE router. Do you remember when President Trump stood up and said, "Whoa, stop! We don't want these in our country. This telecoms equipment, we need to stop it now." And it nearly sent that company into liquidation. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
No, I don't. I don't remember that, but it's an interesting point.
Well, they had a conversation, and then President Trump had a conversation with President Xi, and President Xi asked President Trump, "Please, will you allow this company to carry on trading?" Then there was a discussion in the background, and what President Trump said, "We will allow the ZTE equipment, but our military is forbidden from buying any of your equipment." So he's definitely protecting your country.
Yeah, Make America Great Again. You guys will remember that 4-part Carl Cameron at Fox News series right after 9/11 about Israelis spying on this country, and the Israeli telecoms really spying and gathering all of the information. They knew what was going on leading up to 9/11. They were in on it. That's why the Mossad agents who were returned to Israel said after the event, "We were there to document the event."
Our purpose was to document the event.
How do you document an event unless you have pre-knowledge? So, the Israelis I'm very suspect of what's going on there, too. It's not just the Chinese, and it's certainly not just the Russians.
Well, I just want to jump in real fast and allude to 1958 here. Let me zoom in a little bit on it. It says, I scrolled too far, here we go. He says, China hacked HRC server, false, access was granted. You have more than you know. So I don't even think the Chinese necessarily hacked the server. I think access was sold to them for pennies on the dollar. So this is far worse than it being like negligence and
it's treason. It's absolute 100% treason, and that's the other part. The other part, she should be tried for so many crimes. It astounds anybody paying attention, because we haven't even talked about the Clinton Foundation and all the pay for play, the bribes, right? But can we just do this? I just want to share my screen, guys, and let's talk about the latest from Q, because one of the things that needs to be mentioned is the fact that there are now new Hillary emails, right? And apparently she and her deep state buddies would refer to her as Alice. And then you get into the whole parable of Alice in Wonderland and going down the rabbit hole. And what is a white rabbit? And Q has talked about all of this. It gets us into the horrific Alex Podesta art, his real name, Arthur Podesta, related to, yes, the Podesta pedophile brothers. And the pedophilic imagery that we see in these Alex Podesta art exhibits is that a white rabbit is an abused child, a sex slave, or a satanic ritually abused child. But anyway, September 4th, some new Q. John McCain was on his way to becoming an American hero, but instead became a senator for ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood. No American senator fought for Islamic rights and the arming of jihadists like Senator McCain. And of course, guys, Q refers to McCain as no name because he doesn't deserve to be mentioned, because he truly has been a traitor to the Constitution. And I made the point in a recent tweet, you guys, that his biggest cheerleader on Twitter for a very long time was Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. I mean, that's all you need to know about the Clintons and about McCain. They were all chummy puppets of the Rothschilds. And by the way, as I scroll down, let's just cover this too. Note the satanic cross that Hillary Clinton wears, and note the cross that her daughter wears, and note the fact that in these new emails, Hillary goes by the code name Alice. Go down the rabbit hole, folks. Let's talk about white rabbits. Let's talk about human sex trafficking. Let's talk about pedophilic practices. Let's talk about Laura Silsby getting caught at the border of Haiti trying to traffic out 33 children. And who came to her aid? Bill and Hillary Clinton.
412.
You just can't make this stuff up. And, you know, I'll tell you, Q has said, those who know can't sleep. That's how bad it gets, folks. When we talk about the child sex trafficking and the satanic ritual abuse and the MK Ultra mind control, it literally is far darker than any of us want to deal with. And it all would have continued unabated. It would have gone covered up forever, and they would have just rolled out their new world order if that witch would have gotten in the White House. Again, I hate to sound like I'm proselytizing, but I really do think it was a miracle that she lost and that they didn't stack and rig the election and get her in. It would have been the easiest thing in the world. It would have been game over for the Constitution. Q has said, if the United States falls, the world falls.
That's 100%. That's 100% right. Well, just to agree, but it's like what Q, coming back to what Q said, as I tried to mention earlier on as well, as you said there, Sean, you know, those that know can't sleep. And from the stuff that we interacted with earlier on, when it was first becoming apparent, the heinous crimes towards children, then the amount of human trafficking as it expands, as it gets ever bigger and ever worse. You agree, those that know cannot sleep. We as a society, as a world, I think we dodged a huge bullet. I think a timeline shift, whatever happened. And for President Trump to take the reins and now to see this vast scheme of corruption, death, and evilness to become exposed, to bring darkness, to bring light to darkness, and to expose this huge cabal, it's changed our histories. I mean, I pray, I come back and I pray to God, and I thank Him for not only for, and you'll castigate me, not only for President Trump, but for the whole shift change and for patriots around the world to come together once they've seen the horrendous crimes. Make sure that no name and the likes of them will be prosecuted to the full, and do that paperwork.
GT, I don't mean to throw you on the spot here, but I know you've done a lot of research into the Clinton Foundation and the relationship to, you know, your homeland there in Ireland. Do you want to expand on that a little bit? Because I thought that stuff was pretty interesting.
My research only as far as working in with the likes of Charles Ortel and skimming in with him. I've interviewed him and I've spoken with him and directed me, and he was the one that pointed out the crimes committed by the Irish government and how deep in state that we have become since our involvement with the Clintons through the peace agreement, and I would argue probably before then, but no more so when the Clintons became involved in Ireland. It seems to have been the starting point for only the 15, 20 years of cultural Marxism that seems to have ensconced and placed itself here through, I feel, their connections, through different universities in the United States, different professors that were shipped over here in a supposed cultural exchange. Once they grabbed hold of our academia, it seems that the premise was then to attack what Ireland's constitution. Ireland's constitution is based on three: the individual, the family, and the nation, in a subsidiary sort of environment. It's a counter check balance. The family's needs don't override the individual needs, and the nation's needs don't override the family needs or the individual needs. But these have been attacked through referendum. It's the only mechanism in our constitution that allows for the altering, and they do blitzkrieg attacks on referendums. We had the shortest referendum 2 years ago in under 3 weeks. 3 weeks it was announced, boom, 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 and it was done. And we had all the main players. We had Feeney, Soros, everybody coming in on attack. But with the Clintons specifically, once they became involved over here, it branched out. We had different foundations coming over. You'll know the One Foundation. You'll know the investigations that I've done with Stable 8 Genius, where we exposed, which was already previously exposed, which Charles Ortel led us on, to Rambexi, to the defunct HIV vaccines that were shipped across the world, produced here in Ireland, produced and sent around the world, which caused horrible deaths to people in Africa and over there that used these defunct drugs that weren't manufactured correctly, weren't transported correctly, and I can guarantee 101 weren't administered directly. And as Charles first spoke to me, and I would like to draw your attention, it is a most excruciating death. If you don't have HIV, it's the most excruciating death. So leading back, I'm always drawn to the Irish involvement, the Irish players. We have our cabal here, which are fast and fed, paid their installment through Irish aid, $100 million into the Clinton Foundation, which has never been audited, and those funds don't show up on any of their books either. So I think the inference into the Clintons over here in Ireland was one of the major fastballings to the state that we're in now. We were already a kind of left-leaning social democratic society. We were tittering on the bench of, you know, getting it right. Clintons came in now, and it seems to have full tilted us far left. We've gone far left. It's scary over here.
Anybody want to run with that? Anybody want to respond to that, or anybody want to weigh in on one of Q's new posts?
Well, just as a brief one, in relation to Ireland, there was a guy called Peter Sutherland. He died not long after. In fact, I think he died earlier on this year.
He died last year, and he handed over the reins to our now foreign minister, Simon Coveney, who proudly wears as an emblem that he was awarded when he went into the Bilderberg meetings. There was another YouTube station called Truth for Change that highlighted Peter Sutherland in Copenhagen, and unbeknownst to themselves, they managed to capture our then Minister for Farms, who is now the Foreign Affairs Minister. You know, outright, what was he doing in a Bilderberg meeting as a not a private citizen, as a public representative? Where's the minutes to that meeting? I want to know what went on in there, and why were you there representing the Irish people? These people need to be called out.
Well, Peter Sutherland, first of all, is a Fabian again, so he's a Marxist. He's an executive member of the Fabian Society. He was also a chairman of the bank. He was also the chairman, I believe, of the London School of Economics, which is, again, a Fabian-controlled and run university in London, and was founded by the Rockefellers. So all of that basically comes together. But that guy died earlier on this year, and there was a number of people who died at the turn of last year into this year. There was a number of CEOs. There was a CEO and a few of his family who died on an air crash in Australia. Again, all of this seems to link in.
I want to say something here. I'm looking at Zero Hedge, guys, and the top item today is he's off the rails. Woodward's explosive new book exposes nervous breakdown of Trump presidency. This deep state attack, I mean, we're going all the way back to the same Watergate reporters that blah, 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 right? This is all CIA tactics to bring down this president. And the Mockingbirds, all they have left is hyperbole, puffery, and outright lies. And slander and libel, right? That's all they have left. They don't have anything on this president. I'd say this president is holding it together pretty darn good when he's the target of outright lies, and these people bear false witness against him all day long. You want to talk about a commandment that these people love to break? Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. That's all they do. That's all CNN does all day long. And they bring on guests to lie about him. They bring on prostitutes that have been paid to lie about him. And if the best they have is Stormy Daniels, I'd say he's weathering the storm pretty damn well, because Hillary Clinton, she gets to wake up every day and rely on CNN covering up her crimes. Now, if that wouldn't put you into a fit of rage if you were President Trump, what would? And that's why he takes his case to the American people via Twitter, and he names the names. He names the deep state names all day long, and he says, Sessions, when are you going to do your job? Why don't we investigate Clinton and these other folks who have already been caught for wrongdoing? Why don't we investigate them instead of this nonstop Russiagate, Russiagate, Russiagate nonsense? Again, Seth Rich being the key to unlocking that whole fable. So guys, over here on August 31st, I mentioned earlier here in the call that Hillary Rodham Clinton went by the code name Alice. Saudi Arabia, who she's chummy with, and we know they love their child sex trafficking over there. The royals and the princes all like to traffic in children. SA equals Wonderland. Q asks, who are the white rabbits? And guys, it turns out the white rabbits are not just abused children. It's also the traffickers. It's those that traffic in and ritually abuse children. And then here's an email. Here's one of those new emails. New HRC emails. They call her Alice, and the email was from Hatter, as in Mad Hatter, Alice in Wonderland, guys. You go down the rabbit hole, and we're going to find some very, very, very dark things. And I think the NSA, I think the White Knights know about all of it, which is why Q says those who know can't sleep. And it's far, far worse than you can imagine.
I would like to see if I'm not going to pre-position, I'm not going to pre-warn, but if the military tribunals come out, if any of this evidence or any of the further stuff will become known to the public, as much as we know, the heinous crimes that she's involved in and the rest of them, will the Q team, will the military tribunals, will they release that information to the extent and to the sheer horror that they've committed, that we know, like Wiener's laptop in New York, we're still waiting for that. Is that going to break? Are we going to see any of that? People need to know. People need to know how bad this has actually gotten, and how out of control it really is, and how much flack that the president has taken these last 2 years to make for all of us to acclimatize so that we can become aware and deal what we're about to deal with, what the rest of the world is about to see.
No, I totally agree with you. And you guys, anybody else can weigh in on that. I always like to go back to that Breitbart email from February 6, 2011, in which he said he was shocked that the whole world didn't know that John Podesta was a world-class underage sex slave op cover-upper defending unspeakable dregs. Now, he said that in 2011 before anybody heard of Pizzagate, Comet Ping Pong, or James Alefantis. So if Breitbart was calling him essentially a child sex trafficker, or one who knows about it and covers up for those who do it, back in 2011, before any of us even had heard of Comet Ping Pong in the term Pizzagate, it's pretty clear what's going on here.
Well, I'll just say, to answer a question you asked us all earlier about who's at the top of your list for Perp Walk, and for me, it's always been John Podesta, that creepy man, Skippy, I think he calls his alter ego. I don't know if you ever heard that audio. With him, it's the stuff for nightmares. But Skippy's at the top of my list for sure, because he's as obvious as they come as far as the pedophilia goes. I mean, when you read the emails, you could tell he's really at the heart of a lot of it. And I can't wait till that creep show sees his day in court or in the tribunal.
You're right. So it's Skippy Podesta. And so if we're going to mention that, we have to mention the spirit cooking. We have to mention the interest in the collection of pedophilic related art that his brother Tony is very much into. We have to mention the Breitbart tweet. We have to mention the fact that evidently, if you look at that police EFIT sketch relating to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, there are two suspects. They said they were seeking one suspect, but there was a police EFIT sketch that was released that looks exactly like John Podesta and Tony Podesta. And to me, I think that was a threat to them. I think somehow they were found out. Maybe one of the intelligence agencies found out that they were involved in that disappearance. And I think it was an overt threat, because remember, back at that time, nobody would have suspected John and Tony Podesta in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. So how do you explain that police EFIT sketch? To me, that's always been a big part of this puzzle, and it points directly to their involvement in these nefarious activities.
I want to go back to something you just said about the Podesta art, because there was that picture of the kids, in the, tied with their hands behind their back. And Q, I think it was post 1901. Here, I'll actually bring it up on screen. So Q kind of puts these pictures, or confirms that this art is taking place in this room here, which I believe is in Gloria Vanderbilt's estate.
Yeah, the Vanderbilt mansion.
Yeah, and we know that Anderson Cooper is her son. And you mentioned CNN's unwillingness to cover this stuff, and how quick they are to debunk everything. Not to mention Anderson Cooper's time with the CIA and that whole connection there. But you're starting to see, a lot of these dots connected. with the Vanderbilts, the Podestas, his artwork, you know, his role in the media, his connections to the CIA. You know, it's all coming together in clear daylight. And I think the whole house of cards is about to come down around this stuff.
Well, it needs to come down because it's obvious what these people have been involved with. I mean, this goes back centuries, guys. I mean, this is all Moloch, child sacrifice. It sounds preposterous. Who could believe it still goes on today? But we know what they do at the Bohemian Grove. We know they meet in private, and apparently, well, I mean, male prostitutes are brought in at the very least, that we know, and probably far, far worse. And then Q has made, let's say, mention of or suggested that these elite like to have human hunting parties, and they like to not only traffic in children, but they like to hunt children. And I know that sounds just completely beyond the pale. It can't possibly be the case. But I think it very much is the case. I think that these people, the Rothschilds, and at the very highest levels of the elite, not only traffic in children, they hunt them and they kill them. In literal, what do they call that? The world's greatest game or something? They've coined a phrase for that, and it's the idea of hunting a human.
So Fiona Barrett brought that up, and she directs the Australian involvement, and she said that she was also a victim. She was also hunted. She survived many of the horrible, because of her bloodline. Through her bloodline, she was basically saved. But she was a victim of hunting. She survived that. She sacrifices. She was involved in it all. I mean, I kind of have to be guarded in the way I speak. You know, I don't really want to shock any new viewers and stuff like that. But Fiona Barrett has had a terrible time. There's Liz Conklin that has described, you know, other survivors that have testified to these kind of, you know, horrible instances. When we already know that the Rothschilds sold the Black Forest estate that they had in there, in I think it was either Austria or Switzerland, that they've had in their family for 140 years. And now with the pressure coming from Q, they eventually sold that. But that's all based on the Grimm fairy tales and stuff like that. That's supposed to be the location for where most of that hunting of humans, children, whatever, for the elites, for royalty, all seems to be perpetrated all there throughout the world. But hearing testimony of survivors now that are strong-willed and are able to speak up and trying to help and uncover these horrible, horrible crimes, you know, it just speaks to the endeavors of the human spirit to try and carry on and save other people after being through such a horrible experience like that.
Yeah, well, and we know that they like to traffic in snuff films. So it just recalls to me this story of I think the victim, the pedophile victim's name was Paul Bonacci, and he had testified that there was a man, Hunter, who was the director of one of these snuff films, and all fingers point to Hunter S. Thompson as having been involved in this stuff. Really, truly disgusting stuff. Did you guys ever see that clip of Hunter S. Thompson on the David Letterman show in which he talks about hunting humans?
No.
Literally. You never saw it? I'll try to call it up for you. You guys continue here, and I'll try to find that.
No, there was a lot of information with the Black Forest and the hunting. That was about a year ago, wasn't it? When Q was talking about Switzerland. But one other thing I was going to briefly say there is when Andrew Breitbart put out the tweet.
Yeah.
No, sorry, he was dead a year later.
Yeah, that's right. Let me see how I can figure out how to screen share again, and I'll play this clip for you guys, assuming that you can hear the audio. All right. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
All right. Tell me, I'll play it. Can you hear this? Can you hear Letterman?
Accurate and least factual reporter working today.
You can hear that?
Copy that, yep.
Okay. Listen to this.
I'm from Kentucky.
Kentucky originally.
Where are you from?
Indiana originally, yeah. And what is your life like there? Is it Colorado, you said?
Peaceful.
You're up in the mountains?
8,000 feet.
Yeah. And what kind of a day do you have? So pick any day, for example. Do you get up early and write and stuff, or what?
Yeah, I write early in the morning. I work all day long.
Yeah.
And then I cut the grass, you know, and I chop wood.
Mm-hmm.
And
what do you do for recreation there?
That's what I do for recreation. I work.
You ever hike up into the mountains?
Oh yeah, I do that for. I like to kill.
And when you say kill, you're talking about what, neighbors? What?
We don't want to talk about shooting people, do we?
No, but you're teasing when you say you like to kill, right?
Did you hear that? He says we don't want to talk about shooting people, do we? Listen.
Yeah. No, I'm not teasing. No, I used to like to kill. When I realized that I was hunting in order to kill.
You like hunting?
I quit. Well, I did. I quit.
Yeah. But I know that when you
But I quit because I realized I was not hunting for meat. I was hunting because I like to kill.
Yeah. Have you talked to anyone about this stuff?
So, I mean, that stuff was always swept under the rug. And in this interview, Letterman pretty much ignores it. But I mean, literally, Hunter S. Thompson said in that clip, we don't want to talk about killing people, do we? So the inference by Paul Bonacci is that this man, Hunter S. Thompson, was the director of one of these snuff films in which they murdered a child. Now, that's not beyond the pale. That's not beyond a leap of reason when he's right here on Letterman back in 1988 saying he likes to hunt people. You just can't make this stuff up.
I'd say it kind of probably flew over Letterman's head, you know, because who would think it probably just, you know, in the spirit of the live broadcast, the recording of it, it kind of went over to him. But he was that much of a mindset that he could even speak about it freely. He had no care to kind of be guarded about what he was trying to say, you know, because he knew he was taken as a kook, but he felt that untouchable, that even in the midst of broadcasting to the world as it is, he felt very comfortable in saying that, you know.
Yeah, it reminds us of somebody from the UK named Jimmy Savile, right? He always felt comfortable about his crimes. I mean, they let him diddle children for decade after decade. They let him have full access to mental hospitals where he'd diddle kids. They let him have full access to the hospitals where he'd go down and have sex with corpses. And it was all covered up, and he got knighted by the Queen. I mean, folks, you can't make this stuff up. And so what I think is great, you guys remember the whole 2012 paradigm shift? We were told in 2012 there's going to be like maybe the poles will shift. There's going to be a new awakening for humanity. Maybe it actually happened, guys, because if you go back 10 years prior to 2012, nobody knew about any of this stuff. I mean, really, people knew about the Franklin cover-up, and there was isolated pockets of pedophilia and stuff like that, but nobody had any idea that these intelligence agencies trafficked in children and could pull off something like 9/11 and take us into unconstitutional war after war. Nobody was paying attention to that stuff. And since 2012, now look at how awake all of us are and how all of this is coming out. It's kind of biblical in scope. You know, all that is hidden will be revealed.
Yeah. You know, I've read some more out there books. One I'm thinking of specifically by David Wilcock called the Ascension Mysteries and the Synchronicity Key. There are two books of his that I've read, and he mentions the fact that it's believed right around 2012 that our galaxy would be moving into a higher vibrational energetic field, you know, and that's going to change just overall consciousness on this planet.
Wilcox, just in defense of sake of argument, has been largely maligned in the alt media truth space, along with people like, well, I don't have to name names, but Wilcock in particular, I think lost a lot of credibility for really going way out there on a couple of different topics. And then I think he was in a deal with Gaia, and then there was a whole deal where he walked away from Gaia. There's all sorts of it seems like controversy surrounding him, but I'm not knocking the book. I haven't read it.
Well, I don't follow his Gaia work all that much. I mean, I have, but more for entertainment. But if you read his early work, like the source field investigations or the synchronicity key, or even the Ascension mysteries, especially the first two I just mentioned, though. They're really just kind of hardcore science and history books, that of stuff that's been suppressed. I mean, the source field investigations is nothing but just suppressed science that, you know, it's academically reviewed and peer reviewed. It just didn't get any press because it shattered one paradigm or another that would cost someone a lot of money. So I have a lot of respect for David Wilcock's work. I know he gets a lot of flack for certain things, but when he
Well,
talks, I typically listen.
let me shout out a channel. If people want to learn about hidden history, I mean, honestly, check out this Bright Insight channel on YouTube. That guy does some really interesting work, revealing, you know, everything from the evidence that giants did actually roam the world, roam the earth, and all of that evidence is collected and covered up by the Smithsonian, to the fact that these tremendously large blocks of stone and granite that are perfectly cut and moved. We find these, you know, all over the planet, and nobody can lift them with today's technology.
Perfectly aligned around the planet too. I mean, you could draw a straight line through most of those sites, and it'll go through all of them. You know, they're right on a, I can't remember what it's called, some kind of electromagnetic
The
line.
ley lines and stuff, and they're all set up, you know, in precise, you know, pointing to constellations and stuff. Dragon, looked like you had something to say about that.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of into all this. Graham Hancock is the other guy, and he explains about ancient Antarctica and the maps. He explains that 12,600 years ago, this planet was hit by a meteorite, and then explains what happened. And Antarctica is, or was, a previous advanced civilization. But when you read his books, it's called Fingerprints of the Gods, and everything you're talking about now, or was just talking about there, is contained within his books, and it's a fantastic read.
Yeah, the map you're referring to is the Piri Reis map.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, which was drawn or created in, I believe, the 1500s. And Piri Reis said that he was generating the map from older source maps, a combination of older source maps. And these maps drew the coastline of Antarctica as it exists underneath the ice perfectly, something that we haven't been able to do since we developed the technology within the last, I think, 30 years. And this map, you know, was made in the 1500s, and it had these coastlines perfectly. So,
and we only discovered Antarctica in the late 1800s.
Exactly. So it's a really, Graham Hancock's excellent. All of his books are fantastic. And,
well, I find the hidden history of the human race, and when I say hidden history, the covered up history of the human race, also very fascinating, guys, because I think much of it probably helps support what is read about in the Bible. And I think ultimately that's what they don't want people to know, because they want people to be godless. Ultimately, they want people to be godless and put their defenses down so that their New World Order satanic system can be rolled out, and they won't find much, they won't find much opposition to it, which is why now they're trying to mainstream pedophilia and bestiality and all of that stuff, which Tom DeLay warned us about. They want to mainstream and legalize 12 perversions. Now, who besides the New World Order Satanists would want to do such a thing?
I'll tell you what, not only do I agree with what you just said there, I thought about that and sat here and laid on my bed thinking, all of this information that I've now got, who are these people and why don't they want us to know the truth? And the Fingerprints of the Gods doesn't say, and it isn't any reference to say there isn't a God. It brings me to the belief that there is a God. And they don't want people to see that. They don't want, there is something else at work here that's really quite sinister. But one other thing I'll just want to make a point here. Because of what potentially happened with a meteorite hitting this planet 12,600 years ago, because of it throwing up and where it hit, and it's all explained in the books, one of the things that I often think of is the amount of water that was thrown up into the atmosphere and the floods. And the floods, I'm talking about biblical proportions. I'm talking about Noah's Ark floods. And one of the things that you have to understand is there are many cities that have, folklore, if you like, is said have been lost under the sea. And what have we had in the last 100 years? Submarines. All of this effort that we put into space and space technology, and yet we've got the oceans. And now I am absolutely sure that they have mapped the oceans and they have seen these lost cities and they have seen and evidenced the civilization that was before us. And it can only be done once we got to that stage where we had submarines.
Well, I'll definitely say this. I think that there's something very important and probably profoundly important for humanity going on in Antarctica. I mean, we can all agree that something's up with Antarctica, and they've discovered something. They know something that exists that could literally shift the entire human paradigm and our reality forever if they were to release the information. I'm not exactly sure what they found. Some people might say it's hollow earth. Some people might say it's hidden UFO technology and advanced technology, lost civilizations that were more advanced than we are today. Who knows what they found, but something crazy is going on in Antarctica.
Have a look up at Google Earth, Sean. Go Google Earth, have a look at the photograph of Antarctica, and you'll just see a blank hole. They say they can't pixelate it or it doesn't work, but if you go up to Antarctica and look down from Google Earth, it's blank. It's just a circular hole. There's nothing there.
Well, we wonder about this this ball. Some would say flat Earth. We wonder about what this is that we live on because they've lied to us about everything, including, I believe, the moon missions. They've literally lied to us at just about every turn, so it's hard to know what to believe. I think the CIA said we'll know our job is complete when the American people believe every lie that we've told as being true. When everything that people believe is a lie, we'll know our job is complete.
Just to speak to the Antarctica thing, and going back to the Graham Hancock book, part of his theory is including Charles Hapgood's Earth crust displacement theory, which is like imagining the surface of the Earth as the skin of an orange, like a loose skin around an orange. And when the meteorite hit, this whole skin is one piece kind of shifted. So Antarctica might have been in a more temperate climate, maybe in a tropical climate, back when, we'll just call it Atlantis, it was around, and that high technology, ancient civilization, meteorite hits, shifts the entire crust of the Earth to where it's now on the pole, and it's covered in ice. So that's part of that theory there. I just think it's important to give credit to Charles Hapgood for that part of the theory. A theory that even Albert Einstein endorsed the physics on.
Yeah, he did.
Well, it's interesting that we went into this area of discussion. We could probably talk for another hour or two, but do you guys think we should round this thing out at this point and kind of get a final word from everybody? Gran Torino, I know that you've got some exciting news to share regarding a new political party.
Yes, launching here in Dublin, Ireland on September the 8th, Our Exit Freedom Conference is the start of a new party, Our Exit. Very much involved over here. It comes in part from the Nigel Farage's communication officer, Herman Kelly, has instigated it. And in essence, we will be proponent, looking to, for our exit, for Ireland to exit the European Union and to start controlling its own borders and become a sovereign nation once again. So very much keep your eyes peeled on that new political party. And I would say all due to President Trump. I'm sure there was machination. I'm sure there was behind the scenes building up. But President Trump has given voice to those of us that thought we were lost, that we never thought that she would lose, that this would just go on ad hoc and just never end. But we've been given new voices.
That's awesome. All right. Well, good on you, my friend, and God bless. And patriotism all over the world is rising, I think. I mean, people don't want this EU. They don't want the bureaucrats in Brussels dictating how they live their lives. Unelected Rothschild puppets in Brussels. Nobody wants that.
Sean, quick one before you hand over, and I hope you don't mind, just to give a couple of, I know we were elevating some shows, some programs, some YouTube channels. I want to give some props out to some Irish YouTubers, if that's okay. People
for sure, of course, yeah.
Work at Oral Art, The Dawn, Critiqued, Disinformation. Irish channels over here. Dave Cullen from Computing Forever, one of our biggest YouTube platforms, does some very great work, some great breakdowns. And as we say, a rising tide raises all ships. So props out to the Irish YouTubers. Keep up the great work.
Okay, and in case I stepped on the first one or two you mentioned, can you mention those again?
Yeah, there's The Dawn, Critiqued, Oralard, and Computing Forever, Dave Cullen, great shows. Disinformation, all the usual suspects, great channels.
Perfect. Dragon, would you like to round us out with any final thoughts? Any predictions about what we might see between November 11th, now and November 11th of this year or next?
I have a prediction that President Trump will, within the next week, declassify the FISA document completely. I have a prediction that a number of people in the UK at a senior level are going to be extradited to the United States of America.
Wow. That would be, I think that would almost be unprecedented if they're high-level politicians. Is that what you're saying?
Most definitely. And let me tell you something, I am firmly of the belief that the hierarchy, establishment, elites, cabal, whatever you want to call them, in this country have committed an act of war against the United States of America, without any doubts whatsoever. That's my opinion.
Well, they were definitely involved in the crimes of trying to rig the election for Hillary Clinton and steal it from Donald Trump. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, or at least in the crimes of trying to topple Donald Trump once he became president with this phony dossier.
If you use espionage assets against another country and against their constitution, which is basically what they've done, then that is an act of war. Let me put it this way. The simple way to say this is, if you believe any Americans have committed treason, anyone that is complicit in that treason and conspired with them in this country or any others in an official capacity, they have committed an act of war.
All right. Well, we'll see how this plays out, and I hope you're right. Boy, would that be exciting news if we saw some high-level politicians extradited to the United States. All right. Well, that's a heck of a prediction. 412, Anon, final word from you on any of the above.
I just want to, say that I think we are about to see maybe some perp walks. I think that the Mueller investigation doesn't have more than maybe a couple more weeks left. I think that's about to get shut down pretty much, probably right as they release those 20 pages of the redacted pages of the FISA. And just speaking to the prediction side of things, Q kind of gave us a timeline, and I'm trying to find the posts, but essentially Q said in one post that 2018 would be glorious. And then Anon responded on the Q research board saying, in my opinion, 2008 already is. And Q then quoted that Anon and responded to him saying, it won't be glorious until those responsible are dead or suffering. So if he's telling us that 2018 will be glorious and then defining exactly what glorious means, meaning that our enemies will be dead and or suffering, to me that means, buckle up. It's going to be a heck of a last quarter of 2018. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing how this develops and seeing justice served to the deep state. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, amen. All right, guys. Well, this is the very definition of where we go one, we go all, right? All of us from different corners of the world coming together for liberty, right? For humanity, because humanity does have the ability to live in peace if we can all be free, because it's the enemies of humanity that want to corral us into their new world order so they can control us for another millennia, which they've been doing since the beginning of time. Now, 412, I know we can follow you at 412anon87 on Twitter, and of course the Patriots Soapbox 24/7 live stream on YouTube. Gran Torino, how do people follow your excellent work?
Gran Torino on Gab, Ron W. Croft on Twitter, my real name, and the Gran Torino on YouTube. Thanks very much, John.
All right, brother. Thank you for your time. And Dragon, how do people follow your great work?
I am on Patriot Soapbox on a Wednesday evening. Well, actually, UK time, it's between 8 and 10, which is 3 till 5 Eastern. That's on a Wednesday evening and a Friday evening. And basically, I'll jump on and off the channel there. And on Twitter, again, that's at Graham H. Moore, M-O-O-R-E. And just to tell everyone, this is important to me, I am shadow banned, so it really aggravates Twitter when I get new followers.
You're not shadow banned. Jack just lifted it off for everybody. We're all free.
Yeah, that's true. My shadow ban was lifted when I checked today.
Yeah, Jack had some splaining to do. You know, so does the YouTube CEO, Susan Wojcicki. She's got some splaining to do. All right, guys. Well, you know, Make America Great Again. Let's make that MAGA, Make America and the World Great Again. I want to thank each and every one of you for your time and your activism. Love you guys.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. God bless. And folks, you can follow me over on Twitter at SGTreport. And for real news 24/7, visit SGTreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.
The CIA is actually the organization behind all child trafficking in the Western world and beyond.